All right, I want to tell you about something that President Trump said yesterday that is just mind-blowing. And when I heard this, I just did a double take. I looked at my wife and I what? Did we just hear that? Is this really every day we wake up and there's just absolutely something crazy that's come out of Washington that we have to report on? And this, as someone so artfully described a little bit earlier in the chat, this is a felony, what the president is asking people to do, which is basically to vote twice. Yes, he wants people in North Carolina to vote twice. And with further clarification from his own attorney general on just that point. So we're going to hear first from President Trump yesterday when he was asked about mail-in voting. Once again, foisting this whole canard on the American people. Canard, by the way, is one of my favorite words. This lie, this piece of propaganda that mail-in voting shows widespread fraud. There's zero evidence of it, and yet the president keeps using this attack line. Zero evidence of it. And yet the president keeps using it. So when asked yesterday about mail-in voting in North Carolina, where he was visiting and campaigning, whether or not the people of North Carolina should do mail-in votes or absentee votes or just go to the polls, here's how the president responded yesterday on the tarmac. Listen to this.
600,000 people could vote by absentee in this state. Are you confident in that system?
Well, they'll go out and they'll vote, and they're going to have to go and check their vote by going to the poll and voting that way, because if it tabulates, then they won't be able to do that. So let them send it in and let them go vote. And if their system's as good as they say it is, then obviously they won't be able to vote. If it isn't tabulated, they'll be able to vote. So that's the way it is. And that's what they should do. I don't like the idea of these unsolicited votes. I never did. It leads to a lot of problems. They've got 11 problems already on very small contests, so I'm not happy about it. At the same time, we're in court on a lot of it. We're going to see if it can be stopped. But send in your ballots, send them in strong, whether it's solicited or unsolicited. The absentees are fine. We have to work to get them. It means something. And you send them in, but you go to vote. And if they haven't counted it, you can vote. So that's the way I view it.
I wish I could sit up here and say that I think that our government has handled things brilliantly during this pandemic. It hasn't. I wish I could sit up here and say that this president is competent. I can't say that. I think this president uses politics and political grudges, and while Americans are suffering, how are you going to withhold funding from certain states and cities if there's demonstrations happening where people are relying on services that come from the federal government when America is suffering right now? I don't know how you can be biased towards that or unbiased towards that. If you're in support of that, you need to get your head examined. I'm through. I'm through with this incompetence. I'll say the same thing on either side of the aisle. But I'm not going to apologize for that. So here's what you got to do, North Carolina. Okay, listen to President Trump. He's asking you to commit a felony. So mail in your ballot, but then also go and vote in person. And then maybe he'll pardon you when you get thrown in prison. Okay, so your president just instructed you to mail in your ballot and then also go and show up at the polling place. Again, this propaganda line. Yeah, I saw Jeff here in the chat just saying yes, there have been instances of voter fraud. Yes, from mail-in ballots. Instances, one-off cases. And they've been caught and stopped. Instances. But widespread voter fraud from mail-in ballots has not existed. And we've been doing it since the Civil War. There's just no evidence of it. And they keep spinning this BS yarn about it, and they cannot tell you where this evidence is. You know why? Because there is none. We interviewed David Dayen about that very question, and he's just lying. He said, no, there is zero evidence of it. And this is something he's been studying for years. Zero evidence. Even Attorney General Bill Barr yesterday, and we'll get to him, admitting that there is no widespread evidence of it. But he had to kind of dig himself out of a corner first, and Wolf Blitzer had to push him on it. Watch this interview yesterday with Bill Barr. It got testy, specifically around mail-in voting. And Wolf Blitzer was asking him specifically about the president's words just then on the tarmac about mail-in voting. The reason that this is so important, folks, is because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And we don't want people to have to take their health and wellness put that up for grabs just to go to a polling place that may or may not have been sanitized and they don't have social distancing protocols put in place. And have you ever been to a polling place? I have. It's like at a bingo hall somewhere half the time, or a fire department or wherever. And they've got tables, everyone's pulling levers and doing different things. You want to put your health and wellness in the hands of those people? I mean, they do a great job, but come on, really? When you could mail in a ballot and be just as effective, why wouldn't you? Especially since we've been doing it since the Civil War. And it's good enough for diplomats, it's good enough for the military, it's good enough for politicians to do it. Heck, it's good enough for President Trump to do it. But it's not good enough for you to do it? Garbage. Anyway, here's Bill Barr being asked specifically about the president's comments yesterday. Listen to the Attorney General of the United States.
Let's talk a little bit about what the president also said just a little while ago about North Carolina's absentee voting system. He said, and I'm quoting him right now, "So let them send it in and let them go vote. And if the system is as good as they say it is, then obviously they won't be able to vote." That sounds like he's actually encouraging people to commit a crime, to vote twice.
I'm sorry, you'll have to read that again.
All right.
I'm sorry. I was watching another show. I know I'm a guest on your show. I'm sorry, you got to read that again. I don't know. You expect me to know what the president's talking about? Come on. He just tells me what to do and I do it. Well, he repeats it. Here's his answer.
So let them send it in, the email, the voting by mail, and let them go vote the ballot. Let them send in the ballot and then let them go vote. And if the system is as good as they say it is, then obviously they won't be able to vote. It sounds like he's encouraging people to break the law and try to vote twice.
Well, I don't know exactly what he was saying, but it seems to me what he's saying is he's trying to make the point that the ability to monitor this system is not good. And if it was so good, if you tried to vote a second time, you would be caught if you voted in person.
That would be illegal if they did that. If somebody mailed in a ballot and then actually showed up to vote in person, that would be illegal.
I don't know what the law in the particular state says.
You can't vote twice.
Well, I don't know what the law in the particular state says and when that vote becomes final.
Is there any state that says you can vote twice?
Well, there's some, maybe that you can change your vote up to a particular time. I don't know what the law is.
I'm just the Attorney General. I don't know what the law is. No state allows you to vote twice. I don't know what the law is in North Carolina. You're the Attorney General of the United States. And you're making a huge case against the fraud that's involved in mail-in voting. First of all, we should have online voting. Argue that against me. We do all of our banking online. We can transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars in seconds around the world all the time with two-factor authentication, encryption, everything else we have to do. Heck, to sign up just for a Webull account, you have to show your ID and prove that you're really who you say you are, just to be able to trade stocks. To be able to vote, we can get passports, we can renew things online, we can get residency cards and passports and driver's licenses, yet we can't vote online. We can get our health care online. We can get all of it. We can file our taxes online. You mean to tell me we can't vote? No, we can't. You know why? Because when you make it easier for people to vote, guess who ends up winning? It's simple. And that's why there's been a long time pressure from Republicans to try to keep it difficult for people to vote. Overwhelming evidence of that. Routinely. Why are there fewer precincts in poor neighborhoods? Why? Why do we have lines until 11:30 at night in black neighborhoods? When all the white families and all the white people get to vote and they're home and ready for dinner at 5 o'clock after work. But you have lines out the door in traditionally black neighborhoods until 11:30 midnight. The evidence is there. So we should absolutely have electronic voting. We should have mail-in voting, should be easy and accessible for everyone. And we shouldn't be playing politics like this with mail-in voting and trying to scare people that it's not effective or that it's unsafe somehow. So I loved how Wolf Blitzer continued to push this point. He didn't roll over for him. When William Barr, he said he was trying to make the point about voter fraud. He kind of perked up a little bit, like someone gave him a shot of adrenaline for a moment, and he went back to his old talking points about the propaganda around mail-in voting. And then, when Wolf pushed him on this fact that there's zero evidence of widespread voter fraud, he admitted it. he admitted that there's zero evidence of widespread voter fraud. This undercuts everything that the president and William Barr have been saying over the past few months. This undercuts what Mark Meadows has been saying. This undercuts what Peter Navarro has been saying. The list goes on. Right here from the Attorney General. Listen to how he gets stuck in like a verbal cul-de-sac from Wolf Blitzer. Never thought I'd say that. Wolf Blitzer and verbal cul-de-sac in one sentence. Here you go.
Well,
System,
well, if you know what he's
believe-
saying, why
he
are you
doesn't
asking
believe
me
in
what
the-
he's saying?
He doesn't believe in the mail-in voting. You're the Attorney General of the United States.
Why does you? Yeah.
He said if you expand mail-in voting, this is the president.
This is,
it's reckless.
Well, this is a sort of cheap talk to get around the fundamental problem, which is the bipartisan commission chaired by Jimmy Carter and James Baker said back in 2009 that mail-in voting is fraught with the risk of fraud and coercion.
But since then, there have been
until
a lot
this
of
administration,
that haven't proved it.
let me talk.
Yeah, please.
And since that time, there have been in the newspapers, in networks, academic studies saying it is open to fraud and coercion. The only time the narrative changed is after this administration came in. But elections that have been held with mail have found substantial fraud and coercion. For example, we indicted someone in Texas, 1,700 ballots collected from people who could vote. He made them out and voted for the person he wanted to. Okay?
Because
that kind of thing happens with mail-in ballots, and everyone knows
But
it.
there are individual cases. But as far as widespread fraud, we haven't seen that since.
Well, we haven't had the kind of widespread use of mail-in ballots that's being proposed.
Ah, well, yes, you're right, Wolf. We haven't. And by the way, that commission looked at the possibility that we could have fraud, that it could be fraught with fraud. But there's been no evidence of that. And he admits right there that we have not had that type of widespread fraud because, yes, well, we haven't done it yet. Do you think about the amount of garbage that happened during the 2000 election with George W. Bush and Al Gore and in Florida? And remember the recounts, and we're throwing this ballot out and that. Those weren't mail-in. Those were done at actual polling places. And just because one little hanging chad was off of the back of it, that vote didn't count. That person clearly took a pin, put it through that person's name. The chad hung there, it didn't break off, and that didn't count. Really? Or a pregnant chad, do you remember that? Where you would push on the little ballot, and if it didn't all the way go through, like a little old lady punched it, she's like, I'm going to be voting for George W. Bush, and she pushes it, and it didn't quite go all the way through, but clearly that's who she was voting for. So if you looked at the card, you see one area where George W. Bush, and it was like a little pregnant push, but it didn't break through. That didn't count. Okay, really? But under normal circumstances, it might. Now that you have people actually looking at them and holding them up with magnifying glasses, really? So you mean to tell me like our election system with everyone putting these paper ballots and going in and pulling these little punch things and those computer systems that are all in these precincts at these fire departments, you're like, okay, I think I just voted. I don't know. Did my vote go anywhere? It's going to some computer somewhere. I hope it worked. Really? And you're worried about mail-in voting? And look what happened during the last election. I mean, absolute propaganda. But there you have William Barr admitting to Wolf Blitzer that, in fact, no, you're right, Wolf, we don't actually have any evidence of that because we've never had an election like this. We've never had a widespread fraud because we've never tested it. Okay, so then all of you guys saying that there's widespread fraud for mail-in voting are wrong. We don't have any evidence of that yet. Now, I hope I'm right. I hope that after this election comes and goes, there won't be any widespread fraud. But at the same time, we're in the middle of a pandemic and we need to make sure we put these safety precautions in place, make sure that the post office is set up to do that, make sure that those people responsible for scanning those and the sorting machines are there and we can scan this stuff and get these done as quickly as possible. Election officials are saying that they hope to have the mail-in ballots counted by at least no later than about 72 hours after Election Day to try to get them done as quickly as possible. What do you think about this? Let me know, where do you come down on this, on William Barr's comments here about President Trump and and mail-in voting? Smash that like button and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber to the channel. Let me know, do you think that there's widespread fraud because of mail-in voting? Are you encouraged by the president asking people to go vote twice, by mail and in person? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.